Good morning. I was thinking I should take a picture of who's here on Monday morning. Thank you for your presence here. Before I introduce Karen, I want to make a very brief announcement. Jennifer left us with about 10 copies of the text of her opening keynote on Friday in Spanish. So if somebody would like it, or if somebody would needs to practice their Spanish, there's a good text for it. And you can find me right after, or you can find me or he or I, or me. Who's the English teacher? Don't pay no attention. So it is my pleasure to introduce Karen Cator, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Digital Promise. Karen has been in education for a good long while and has been focused on transforming American education through technology, innovation, and research. In her career, she, from 2009 to 2013, was the Director of the Office of Education and Technology at the U.S. Department of Education, where she led the development of the 2010 National Educational Technology Plan and focused on the office's efforts on teacher and leader support. The only thing I can briefly comment as an aside is that that did not happen under this administration. Prior to joining the department, Cator directed Apple's leadership and advocacy efforts in education. In this role, she focused on the intersection of education policy and research, emerging technologies, and the reality faced by teachers, students, and administrators. I pressed something. Sorry about that. She began her education career, of all places, in Alaska. If you've never been to Alaska, make a point of going to Alaska. It's absolutely beautiful. She started as a teacher, ultimately leading technology planning and implementation. She also served as a special assistant for telecommunications for the governor of Alaska. And again, as a small aside, Alaska, because of its population distribution, was one of the pioneers in distance education and incorporating technology to make education, higher quality education, more accessible to remote and rural communities. She also served as, Karen holds a master's in school administration from the University of Oregon and received the 2014 College of Education Distinguished Alumni Award. The American Association of Publishers awarded her in 2014 the Visionary Award. She received her bachelor's in early childhood education from Springfield College, and in 2015, again, their Distinguished Alumni Award. She's an Aspen Pahara Fellow, the past chair of the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, and has served on multiple boards, including the Software and Information Industry Association, with a focus on education. So please join me in welcoming Karen Cator.
That's all right. This is what Alaska looks like right now. I guess that's what it's I don't know. Not sure what happened here, but we'll start over these slides. There we go. All right. Oh, this is the microphone. Sorry, I tend to wander around, so I think I better get this out of here. So good morning, nice to see everybody. And for those of you who are either sitting all by yourself or way in the back, you might over time sort of wander down this way or find someone to talk with. But we'll work on that a little bit later. So really happy to be here. I told Pedro he could simply say I spent time in public education, and then corporate America, and then government, and now nonprofit. So kind of have my whole career all with this really the same goal, and that's to create the best possible learning environments for this generation of students. And so the kids have kind of changed, the technologies have come and gone, but the actual learning environments, the kinds of things that are considered best, really have not changed all that much. So at Digital Promise, we work at the intersections of researchers, developers, and and school leaders, and engage people in kind of breaking down those silos and trying to bring research into the development process, research into schools, and likewise help researchers learn from others as well. So it's kind of the breaking down the silos work. We build networks that we'll talk a little bit about. We believe in the power of story because that's what's inspiring, that's what helps people gain ideas and incentivize action. We believe in the power of research to ground us and make sure that we're working on things that are true and real and evidence-based. And finally, the power of engagement, because engaged learning is really what will incentivize and help people become learners for their entire life. So first of all, quickly about Digital Promise, we have 3 different networks. We work with the League of Innovative Schools is a 93 school district leader network, a coalition of folks. They get together a couple times a year, they work with each other, they help each other by supporting, they take risks, they try new things, they share ideas, share practices, share leadership, and it's a powerful way to solve complex problems by bringing people together. We also have a network of middle schools that we work with, funded by Verizon, and they have tablet devices and data plans for students, breaking down the homework gap, breaking down the digital divide. But as you can imagine, we provide lots and lots of classroom-based coaching, professional development, technical support. We do storytelling. There are a lot of other things that surround that network. And also another network where we're really looking at the power of classroom-based coaching and doing research to say what are the practices that classroom coaches can bring into a school and support a more powerful use of technology. So those are our networks, bringing people together, convening people, and in particular, engaging them and grounding the work in collective challenges and opportunities, and then sharing those out broadly. The second thing we have a number of projects where we take an essential question and we try to do some design around those things. If we have time at the end, I can tell you about a couple of those things around educator micro-credentials, around our learner positioning system work, which is research-based factors associated with learning, but that might all be for another day. In terms of research, we really seek to increase the research use. So as people are developing strategies, practices, as they are working on products, how can we make sure that they have access to the research findings, what we know about how people learn, and to more fully inform the work that they're doing. We've created a research map that is actually a visualization of citation data, again, including kind of more than 100,000 articles that are peer-reviewed. They all are located in the Web of Science, and we take that citation data and build this visualization, so that's something you can check out if you're doing research. It's kind of like your lit review done for you. So. And then we just have recently launched our Learning Sciences Center. Dr. Barbara Means and Dr. Jeremy Rochelle run this, and we have a team of researchers that have now joined us. This is a book that just came out. Andy Crum and Barbara Means and Marie Bienkowski published this, Learning Analytics Goes to School. So this use of real data for continuous improvement and how you can take data sets, work them together, create the intersections of data, and then ask questions and solve challenges based on that data. So this is day 3, and you all showed up here on a Monday morning. It's chilly out, it's kind of... So what are some ahas and some questions from your first couple days here? Anybody? This is where you get to participate. You get to talk with all of us in the room. There are going to be some roving microphones, either an aha, something you figured out, or something that you have a question about. There are some microphones that are rolling around here. Not roving, they're rolling. Thoughts, questions? What's on your mind? It's Monday morning. This is the wake-up time. Everybody has coffee, I hope, or water or something. I'm going to call on somebody. There we go. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
Good morning. One of our questions is, and we came as a team from New York State, is how do we bring all of this back and infuse it into what teachers are doing, given all of the constraints put upon teachers and all of the, and we have some wonderful veteran teachers that have done things one way for a long time, and we've got new teachers that need support and guidance, and it's great stuff, but it seems a little overwhelming to carry back.
Yeah, excellent. You come to a place like this, you see these amazing examples, and you find people who are inspired, and then you go back and you're like, how do I bring that? How do I explain what happened? And then how do we make it incredibly tangible? So one of the things that we'll go through today is kind of this challenge-based learning process that is pretty straightforward, and we'll kind of talk through that. But definitely hear you. Good question. Others, thoughts, ahas, questions?
I'll volunteer one myself.
Okay, and then right over here.
The
Yes.
microphone to Anthony. Given your experience working with research and using research to inform practice, I think it would be helpful to know more about how is it that you're communicating to practicing teachers about the power of research to inform their practice and improve student learning.
Excellent. Yes, we can definitely talk about that. How do we take these research findings and help people use them so it actually does inform their practice? And one more right here. Yes, right here.
Yeah, so we use PBL in science education at the elementary school level, and a continuous challenge for us is how to quantify the learning outcomes so that we can compare well against traditional metrics, right? Because lectures and such gives, and problem sets gives good test results, right? So how can PBL compare well against that has been a big challenge.
That is a huge challenge. I'll tell you one quick story. I went into a school that was touting this, having a tutor work with kids on mathematics, and kids were doing better on their test scores as a result of this, and I think they did it for about an hour a day. So I went and observed, and my big takeaway was they probably are doing better on their math, but everybody hates math in this entire situation. The tutors hated it, the kids hated it. They're like dragging kids through algorithms and put the number here, now put the number there. It was about as uninspired as a learning environment as I've seen. And so the challenge is, if you're doing things that are super inspiring and kids are creating and producing and composing and animating and doing all these amazing things, you know that they're thinking more, they're learning those important skills, but then how do we compare when a test score that's given on a certain day and asks certain questions in certain ways is the metric? So that is something that is a huge barrier that we have got to break through, better assessments for these kinds of things. Because as we'll see, so many people are saying this is the kind of learning opportunity that we need. So this morning we're going to have kind of the big idea. So in the whole challenge learning kind of protocols, there's a big idea, an essential question, and a challenge, right? So today we're going to kind of grapple with this big idea of powerful learning. The essential question is, what are the attributes of powerful learning, and how do we ensure more students have those opportunities, right? So one of the things is, what are the barriers? And then our challenge is expand powerful learning opportunities. That's the challenge in front of us. How will we do this? How will we expand those opportunities? And within a challenge like that, if we were in a classroom, that would be the challenge, and then we'd be like, all right, let's go. And then you would say, well, what do we know and what do we need to know to solve this challenge? But we'll get back to that in a little bit. So, as I said, inspiration's coming from some strange corners these days. Anybody know who this is? Jack Ma. You hear him at the World Economic Forum, and he had a lot to say about education. Here's just a quick little video clip.
Education, it's a big challenge now. If we do not change the way we teach, 30 years later we'll be in trouble. Because the way we teach, the thing we teach our kids are the things the past 200 years is knowledge-based. And we cannot teach our kids to compete with machine who is smarter. We have to teach something unique. That is, machine can never catch up with us.
So we have to teach something unique so the machines can't catch up with us. So he went on to talk about kind of that machines, that they will win. If it's knowledge-based, we all know, you can ask the home or whatever the things are in your home, Alexa, you can ask them, or you can ask your phone, or you can ask Siri. There's so many ways you can just find things out. So if we're continuing to focus on just knowledge, obviously students are going to fall short. So we know that these skills of creativity and problem solving and those things that make people unique, those are the things that we have to really think through. Okay, so think of an example of powerful learning, some time in your life, some small example, big example that you recall. Could be in a formal setting, informal setting. Think about that for a second. Talk with someone near you about what that was. So think of an example of what you would consider a powerful learning moment or powerful learning experience. Craft it in your mind and then share it with someone near you. I'll give you just a couple minutes for that. Save the rest of that story. Okay, who's going to share an example of powerful learning? Go ahead.
She got me here with my phone and
I caught him.
I went to grab this guy. Actually, when Karen made the question, the example that came on my mind was an experience that I had when visiting in 2004 the University of Aalborg in Denmark. Some people might be here. And we were preparing the creation of a new campus of the University of São Paulo, and multidisciplinary campus with 10 majors, with no departments and things like that. We have decided to work with problem-based learning, project-based learning, as I was consultant of the university at that time. And when we visited Aalborg, I saw their project about building a satellite, a real satellite. And some people are here, they might remember. And it was kind of impressive for me because of the curriculum of the university at that time, at least in engineering and some other areas, they were connected to the project that the students would build at the university, not the inverse. So the disciplines were organized. I might be wrong, but that's what I understood. So the university decided, okay, we are going to build a satellite, a real one, to be sent to the space by the European Space Agency. And the curriculum from that time on was built to help the students and the professors, who didn't know also they have never built a complete satellite, to reach that. So I think this was a change in my mindset about how we could organize curriculum. I couldn't do exactly that in Brazil, but it really inspired me to, a lot of things that we have done before, after that, because I think it's a way that you change how you organize education.
Fantastic, fantastic, and it is so interesting. You can give people a challenge, and as a teacher, that's a little daunting because you're not sure what the questions are, what you're going to have to learn as you go. But you are in the position then of learning along with who are traditionally students.
And the satellite was launched.
And
it was a real thing.
Yeah, it was a real thing.
2 years or 3 years later, right?
They figured it out. Yeah, and they learned a little bit along the way. Excellent. One more example, somebody? Who's got something? Here you go, right here.
I'm going to use yours. Pedro told me about a really good example, and because I've experienced this as well, and that is our university has a real problem with statistics, in the sense that when we teach statistics, the university teaches this as a bunch of distributions in Greek letters and point estimates and moments, but tell them what your experience, because you can do it better than I can.
Short story is that I failed miserably in an exam where I prepared myself with a big calculator, and the exam had 0 calculations. It was all about conceptual understanding of what the statistics were used for, not how to get to the numbers.
Yeah.
And that was like painful.
Yeah, sometimes powerful learning is painful, but at the end of the day, it's learning. All right, thank you. Keep those examples in mind. So here's an example of some students.
We are not giving them a problem. We're giving them a challenge to just go out in the community and make a positive change.
This is really that chance for really meaningful and deep learning. I mean, it really allows students to just go as far as they want to with it.
So our challenge was to create a product that can measurably affect our community around us. So everyone in my group found that asthma was our biggest interest. A lot of people especially the they don't use their inhalers very often. So when they'll put it in their backpack, they'll come back 3 months later and it'll be completely empty. So we made this cap that goes on that makes sure that it doesn't happen when you're not using it for a long period of time. And so basically, with our program, it's something called an open source file, which means that anyone who has a 3D printer, they can download it and print it themselves. This really gives us the ability to distribute to millions and millions of people that we couldn't do otherwise. And we kind of really realized that we could take advantage of the opportunity we had to really help everyone, and because we weren't really aware of how much we can actually do with these 3D printers, like how much people we can distribute to, how many schools we can help. I have never really had the opportunity to really affect my community. I feel like all our projects and all our classes were really just kind of about getting work done. With this project, I could really have my own ideas and be able to affect thousands of people around me.
Just following passions of whatever it is really what we're pushing for, we're striving for. Because at the end of the day, any student in any grade level, in any discipline, they're going to care about a project more if they're utilizing their talents and skills.
All right, so that was interesting. The one student said, a lot of projects are all about getting work done. And so when we think about projects and project learning, you can give students projects to do, but if the project is just about getting something done, then that's not, that misses some of the core attributes of powerful learning. So there's going to be kind of a series of videos as we go through these attributes. And so what I'd love for you to do is keep track of these, see if anything's missing, right? What's missing, and kind of, as we're thinking about this, what are those important attributes, and how do we make sure that we, I think I'm not going to do this right now. All right, so the first one is that they're authentic and relevant problems. So in that particular video, it was interesting because what the students were doing is they said, go out in your community and affect change. So they had a student in their classroom that had passed out because he had asthma, and his asthma inhaler, when he pulled it out of his backpack, had discharged. And so they realized the problem with these asthma inhalers, kids throw them in their backpacks, they need them once a month or something, they pull them out and they've discharged. So what they created, the sound is a little hard, I think, to understand. What they created was the cap that they could put on those asthma inhalers, and then they published this design so that anyone with a 3D printer could print out their own cap for their asthma inhaler. So it was just a pretty straightforward, project, but again, those students learned a tremendous amount through having that opportunity to do that. So authentic and relevant problems, and this whole notion of the Sustainable Development Goals will kind of come back a few different times, but because those are such an opportunity for 17 different global development goals, and within those, so many relevant challenges to find with students. So here's another video, again focused on a real problem that students noticed, what they found, and then how they solved this. This is quite a powerful learning experience for this group of girls.
Homelessness is an issue in this community because even on the day we walk into school, we see people living on the streets. Just the closeness to our hearts that this issue has just made us want to make it a #1 priority. My name is Paola and I'm a part of the DIY Girls. The DIY Girls is a group of girls here at San Fernando High School who were challenged with creating or engineering solutions to different social problems in our community. So the Lemelson MIT Invent Team program was a grant of $10,000 given to 15 teams throughout the nation, and we all have to engineer a project to help with a social problem. And one thing that was really cool is we were the only all-female Latina team. A lot of the times when people think, how can I help with homelessness, they think about giving money to organizations, but that's not really an option when it's you that's being affected by it. You don't have the money to be giving to someone else when it's your family that might be on the street one day. So we thought, what other ways can we help this problem? So our team invented a durable solar-powered tent for homelessness, and the solar panel includes LED lights, UVC lights for sanitation, and a USB port for charging phones and other electronics. And the tent itself is very durable and portable. Coming from a low-income community, low-income school, we didn't have all the resources that a lot of the teams did have. The internet was our greatest tool. We used YouTube videos, Google, and things like that to help us learn how to sew and code and do all the things. And it feels great to know that we're up there with those people and we're getting recognized for all the hard work that we did. Now that I know that I can learn all these things and I feel empowered in what I'm doing, I know that I can find solutions to problems like this.
All right, so those girls built this tent. So this tent designed and made this tent with these solar-powered panel. Again, pretty ingenious solution to some of the pieces of the homelessness problem. So as I said, the global goals present us many, many opportunities for challenges, whether it is about hunger, health, or education, whether it's about inequality, peace and justice, life on the land, reusable consumption, all of these kinds of things. There's so many things that are global goals, but they also have extremely local effect. So people bringing these global things, creating these relevant and authentic problems, and within a local context. All right, so through these videos too, I'd love for you to kind of notice the technologies that you see. So far we've kind of seen, the 3D printers, we've seen sewing machines, we've seen, those girls said they use search engines and use the technology to find out things, to learn how to do things. And so when you think about the use of technology, it's not kids plugged into headphones again going through problem sets. It's using technology in extremely authentic ways and a kind of a more expansive concept of technology as well. So that's kind of one of the things to pay attention to. So the second thing is it's personal. So authentic, right? You have an authentic challenge, an authentic relevant problem. The second is it's something personal. It means something to you. So this particular, I'm going to give a quick introduction to this. We've been doing a project around using the use of VR. We had a company come to us and say, we want to figure out how VR can be used in education. And the sort of obvious, thing that was the original thing they really wanted to do is figure out how students consume VR. And so what we did, we turned that around and we said, no, let's see how students can produce VR. Can they produce these stories of something personal to them? So again, this idea of something personal. So the video that I'm going to show you is a making of. So you actually can go online and see the actual VR, but it's a student who created a VR about her experience with social anxiety disorder. So a VR is a super powerful way to bring people into your world and see things from your perspective. So that's kind of the backstory for this next video.
I can do this. It's just school. I've been to plenty of schools. It's nothing different. This is gonna be a great day. I can do this. No problem at all.
Our story, Breaking Barriers, is essentially about how anxiety can alter your perception of reality.
Tay and I, we were basically the directors of it.
In the film, our protagonist is new to a school. She's there in the classroom and all of a sudden figures are walking up to her saying negative comments.
You'll never have any friends here.
But in the end, it turns out that it's just her imagination.
I suffer from anxiety. I brought a lot of ideas from how I feel in social circumstances to actually make it feel more realistic.
What are you wearing?
The lines that we made weren't just created. For me personally, I can hear them around school all the time when I walk around the halls.
We had our fabulous student Liam edit it.
For this video, we had 2 takes. What I did is took the second take of people walking up to the camera. I'm having the second video fade in just this outlined area.
we wanted to create the idea that it's all in her head.
I am Erica Welski. I'm one of the school counselors at Parkville High School, and I'm about to watch this video with you guys.
You're useless. Never have any friends here. Hey, you let a couple of us.
Whew, that was awesome. And like, really sad, yet like, really motivating. Honestly, I want to go make my other counselors watch it. Some of them are older than me, and so they may not necessarily remember what it's like to be in high school. I think it was an accurate representation of like what I remember high school being. I was like immediately transported back there, you know, and just kind of like get you in that mindset of how would I as a high school student want my counselor to talk to me.
I would definitely do another 360. It kind of put me in a situation I'm not used to, so it kind of opened me up a bit to the people that I don't usually talk to.
I just felt like, wow, is this really us? Did we really do this? I'm extremely proud of the final product.
So that was the 360 Filmmaker Challenge, and there are multiple stories. There's a very powerful story about some students who were grappling with immigration and deportation. And so you kind of saw it again through this high school girl's eyes, and kind of what happened within her family context in that situation. All right, the third principle of powerful learning is it's connected, it's team-based, collaborative, people are together. In these examples, again, people are working with each other to solve these challenges. So here's one associated with gender identity. And again, through these videos, you can kind of see these themes emerge, that it's personal, that it is something that means something to them, and that students are doing something and taking action.
We just started out with the Young Global Go project. It's basically just taking away from curriculum for a little while to expand our minds more. For our CBL project, we used what we love and what we know to create plays based on our creativity in theater, and we're trying to raise awareness. I think it's important to raise awareness about gender equality because when I started this project, I wanted to make a difference at Carroll because what I had been seeing wasn't always fair to girls and boys, and I wanted that to change. So I decided on gender equality because in the gym class, it just wasn't equality at all. The girls were getting these foam footballs, while the boys got the actual leather footballs, and all the girls were really upset about that.
And so I want to change that. That can transfer into many different things throughout the world, and shouldn't be like that.
This project is different from other projects that we've done in school because most of them, they're just like, we've done several slideshows in social studies, science, we've done book reviews in ELA, and those are all just kind of straightforward, but now we get to like expand and take our interests and make them what we believe in.
The way we transferred from our project of gender equality to writing plays about it was we saw what happened, we created surveys to see how many other people thought that way, and then we thought of some scenarios and we said, well, this would be better if we showed the whole school rather than just learning about it ourselves. And so we created plays to show everyone that this is happening. We feel like we will make a difference after we show these plays, and we feel like our project can become so much bigger if we work a little harder.
Hello world! Our global goal is gender equality. Our challenge was to raise awareness about it.
Our solution is to perform a play that we wrote.
All right, so that one is sort of a much simpler idea, right? These young women, they were working with a global goal of gender equality, but they brought it extremely close to home, right? Since the boys had the real footballs and the girls had foam footballs, and it wasn't fair. And so they began kind of researching it. They did surveys, they collected data, they did a lot of discussions with people, and they feel like they could make a difference, right? So something super simple locally but something that is connected to a global goal. So again, this feeling of empowerment as students work on these kinds of projects. And they also made the comment, like, we do book reports and we do these things which could be sometimes considered sort of projects, but again, the difference between kind of an assignment and something that is super compelling and interesting is important. The next piece is inquiry-based. So this is incredibly important. Teaching people today, especially, even more today than ever, I think, to ask really good questions, to ask and ask and ask and stay in the question for as long as possible and to continue to ask questions, right? To just get in that mindset that everything we talk about, like, think through, like, what are all the questions? Because otherwise we jump straight to a solution really quickly and may not have considered all of the different perspectives and aspects. So really getting good at working with people on inquiry, on building questioning strategies, you know, over the surface, under the surface questions, all different kinds of questions, really digging into those kinds of things that will expand that knowledge base. So this next video associated with inquiry is a group of girls who decided to expand the use of STEM understanding, or expand understanding of STEM within their community. And their community is a Muslim community, and so what these girls did is they set up, these high school girls set up a Saturday class for their young middle school friends at their mosque. So this is listen to this, what these girls did.
So it is Saturday, and as with every Saturday, these girls come in for many hours to work on their progress and preparation for a robotics competition, for which they've learned the fundamentals of the robotics platform that they will be using in preparation for a first LEGO League robotics competition. This year, the theme is hydrodynamics. That means that the girls have to consider in the real world how we use, transport, and dispose of water, and they, like every first LEGO League team, have to come up with a solution that they find within that framework, and then try to create a real-world innovation that could possibly be used to combat whatever problem they did find. So they really have to engage with real-life, research issues and figure out how they could make an impact on their chosen community through that research prompt. For myself, I thought, why can't I find another Muslim girl in my community who is interested in robotics and STEM the way I am? And, I took that further and said, why don't I see enough different brown girls, black girls, Latina girls at robotics competitions? And that was just kind of the question that led me to think, could I possibly help those girls be interested in STEM? So FemSTEM was the effort for me to engage with my community. I wanted to teach robotics somehow because I had all this great robotics knowledge to teach the middle school kids. I've been interested and enjoying public speaking for so long. How can I apply that to help the girls in my community? And I'd like to help all minority girls with the experience that I've gained.
It's really amazing to have one of my dear friends and my closest friends, Zaina, to start one of these, because when she first came up with the idea, I was like, yeah, it sounds pretty cool. We can do it for a couple of years. It won't get too big. And then throughout the competition season, I realized how big of an impact this is actually having on girls all over the world.
So when they're able to connect what they've learned to impacts that they can make on the real world around them and solve problems that are immediately there for them in their community, that's very relevant, and it's going to make a lesson so much more important and stick in their mind so much longer. My name is Zaina, and I'm the founder of FemSTEM.
So I met Zaina, and she talks like that when you meet her. She talks in this long stream of consciousness, which is super articulate. Like she's just kind of an amazing young woman. But she was, she kind of, again, saw problems. She says, why don't I see any people like me at these robotics competitions? So she decided to do something about that and really kind of dug in and launched a whole initiative called FemSTEM. So that was the fourth. The fifth one is builds ownership and agency. So again, this notion of passion, having something. And this is sometimes tough for teachers and instructors and professors to kind of step back a little bit and allow people to figure things out and to have their own questions. Many times as teachers, we love to ask the questions and have the questions for people, and actually we also love to tell them the answers. But really figuring out how we build ownership, agency, step back just a little bit so that students can in fact solve these challenges. That is a big piece of what it takes to be successful. So here's another VR one. This one, and I'll tell you one thing about the VR project that we did. We had mentors, professional VR creators that agreed to be mentors for all the students that we worked with. And one of the things that was the most, I thought, just incredibly interesting is that they said that these students, because VR is so new, because it's just an emerging technology, especially in the development of VR, that these students had developed some competencies with the technology that were definitely equal to or better than the professionals that they worked with. So they came up with ways of doing things. So in the previous one, you saw how that one student designed this methodology for making this, to show that the ideas were all in her mind, right? They figured out how to make the person kind of come in and fade out. So some of these kinds of technologies. So this one, I can't show you a VR, so I'm going to tell you what this is before we watch the video. These students they created a VR. It's about 7 minutes long. It's super compelling, and it's all about the use of standardized tests. And it basically starts with them sitting in the classroom, and you're in the classroom with them, and this guy comes in to tell them like how important it is for them to do really a good job on these tests, and it matters for their funding and all these things. The kids probably it didn't really speak to them. So they kind of created this VR about the brain and the other kinds of things within the brain and the human experience that these tests don't test. And so it's a very compelling way that they had they presented all of this. So here's kind of the making of this particular video.
Creativity is a part of our everyday life, and I think that creativity should be in every aspect of education.
We try to give students a voice in their own education. We don't spell everything out for them. We give them a set of parameters, and they can actually take those and build their own learning.
He introduced us to the 360 video challenge, and within the next day we were in the greenhouse trying to come up with ideas.
Does anyone have any to start off?
A little bit of weight was added to our shoulders, but it let us come up with stuff on our own that we may have not even thought of if he was telling us what we were going to do right off the bat.
Some kids, when they're given a challenge, they're like, oh, this is going to be difficult. These kids say, how can we make this more difficult? How can we challenge ourselves even more? How can we take this even further?
The tour is a 360 video that is about standardized testing and how it doesn't always give you the most accurate measure of intelligence.
This was our film. We got to produce it and write it. It was so great, but I hope for other students to be able to take ownership and take pride in what they do.
When they feel like they have some say in the direction of their learning and they have ownership of it, then they have more invested.
I think that everybody should experience that type of learning.
Okay, so that was the fifth piece of powerful learning. So the technologies that we saw used in kind of authentic ways, just what were some of the technologies that we saw throughout these videos? Just throw them out. You don't need a microphone. Laptops. 360 cameras. 3D printing. Paper and pen. Legos. Yep. Solar power.
YouTube.
Tablets. YouTube. Yep. Sewing machine. Arduinos. Yep. Dry erase markers. Chalkboards. Ways to create together. Pencils. Editing software. Yeah, so when you think about all of the power of these technologies, again, it was not about the technologies, it was about solving a challenge that was real to them. It wasn't about completing an assignment, it was solving a challenge, something that they took with them, were passionate about, created, and then they took action in some way. So this whole idea about how technology can be used, we were talking before we started here about you know, the technologies have definitely changed, have gotten more powerful. When we think about, if you need to do anything, you wake up in the morning and you've got a leaky faucet and you gotta fix it, you can go online and find YouTube videos about how to fix a leaky faucet. There's just videos and ways of doing just about everything. And so those things have evolved, right? So the opportunities have evolved and the power of these technologies have evolved. But again, kind of the notion of powerful learning and these ways that really speak to people's hearts and minds and get them fully leaning in and engaged, those have not necessarily changed. All right, so I'm gonna skip this. I had these Slido, we're gonna use Slido, but I think this is fine without Slido because we can talk out loud. So barriers, what are the barriers? So we did earlier talk about assessment. We also, you brought up the idea that how do we help people do this in their classroom, give them both the faith that it will work, that their kids can actually do this. How do we engage and help teachers do this? What are the other barriers to this? That's probably a good way of thinking about why how to build the opportunities. What are other barriers? Time, absolutely. Leadership and vision, absolutely a barrier. Cost. Resistance to change.
Industrial model of school.
The industrial model of school, you got 50 minutes and you're on to the next thing and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. It's kind of wrapped up in time. The focus on content. You have these things that people have to know because they're about to be tested on them, so you got to make sure they're in their heads before that happens. Absolutely.
Varying degrees of participation.
Say more about varying degrees of participation.
I'm concerned about students who are less inclined to get involved versus those who are more inclined to be involved, and where the students whose voices don't get heard or don't get involved.
Yeah,
how that gets mediated.
Right, and so this is partly the skill of teachers, right, and how you do make sure each student is engaged. There are a couple examples here where students who otherwise really did kind of hang back and didn't feel like they really participated. The girl with social anxiety disorder, she was like, I've talked to people now that I wouldn't have talked to otherwise. So there are definitely ways and methodologies for making sure that people are participating. A lot of that probably has to do with building teams that are appropriate, making sure it gets switched up. In some of these videos, I noticed the same thing. Like it seemed like, well, this one person was sort of the leader, but a little bit of that is the kind of making of. But and leaders emerge, and they may emerge for within the context of different projects. I think one of the things also with the VR videos is making sure that more people than just in both of those, it looked like there was this kind of a main editor that was learning the VR editing software. And so again, making sure that everybody has those opportunities. I loved your example of launching a satellite with that.
From the Alva University.
Right. So when we think about those kinds of things, there's a project that Apple has done in some countries. I think Brazil was the first place where they basically launched a class to teaching people how to create apps, right? But the way that they did it is they launched it as a challenge, and then they backed into all of the things people would need to know to solve the challenge. The challenge was create an app and get it in the App Store in X amount of time or something like that. And so it became very personal right away, and the students learned the various programming and coding and all of the things they need to learn in order to solve the challenge, but it was all kind of backed into, it was within the context of their own questions and when they needed to actually get into it. Any other barriers that you can think of?
How teachers see themselves.
Yeah, how teachers see themselves. That's a really interesting one. I was in a school and a teacher said to me, she said, if there's one more thing that I don't know, I am going to totally lose all credibility with these kids. And the kids were coming to her and she didn't know, and it was like mathematics, it was like something that she really felt like she should know. And so it was a little bit of an affront on her own ego and her own view of herself as a teacher, as the one who knows these things. And she was trying to figure out, like, how do I keep up? Like, how do I, stay ahead? You have a class of 30 kids, and high school kids are smart, right? Well, all kids are smart, but if you have a class of students and they're like zooming out with their own questions, like, it would be hard to keep up with all of those students and be able to answer their questions. But that's where it's, again, the skill of teaching, the power of teachers, the great teachers who have been teaching for a long time, they actually probably would have more confidence, having them look it up or ask each other or figure it out or ask somebody in the community or, figuring out all of the different ways that, that this can happen.
Yeah, something on that, Karen.
Go ahead, you can just talk loud.
Yeah, because I think this point is really important. What I've seen in my work is that this change in the model of teaching impacts the identity of the teachers.
Yeah.
They are formed in our universities to be the ones to teach. And when they go there, tell to the students, okay, now we're going to work and we're going to raise questions. Sometimes they feel that they're not doing their job. So it affects identity of the profession.
Yeah.
And I think this is a
barrier.
A barrier in this way.
Yeah.
It's hard to change the mindset.
It's hard to change the mindset, and it's really hard as a professor. And academia, encourages people to get deeper and deeper and deeper into a smaller and smaller, set. And so many professors want to tell people about that. They want their students to be interested in what they are interested in and where they have gone with this. So it definitely affects the kind of the ego and the relationships. All right.
Moreover, I think the fear of technology is also a problem.
The fear of technology?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I wish we could say it was 2017. Phones have been around for 10 years. I'm sure all these teachers do their own internet research. They maybe on Facebook. They definitely communicate with their kids who have grown and gone. It's just interesting why that barrier comes down in a school. And I think it may be a little bit of like PTSD-ish, not really, but memory in early days of technology when things would work or wouldn't work and you constantly trying to figure it out. But now you really can sort of count on things working, and if it doesn't work, students will sort of figure it out. But there definitely is this lingering notion that something is going to be more difficult if I allow those technologies to be close to my teaching environment. Yeah. So let's run through this. This is quick 10, 15 minutes, just going through the process of challenge-based learning, right? So we're launching something called the Challenge Institute, and the Challenge Institute is simply the larger umbrella around all of these methodologies. There are lots of methodologies that are, experiential and authentic, and lots of methodologies. So we worked with this notion of the protocols around challenge-based learning, which are useful, but they're not the only way to get at this notion of very relevant, real, ownership, passion-driven learning. But this framework is a framework for learning while solving real-world challenges. So everything you saw in these videos always kind of revolved around this notion of presenting students with a challenge. So there are 3 parts to it: engage, investigate, and act, right? Pretty straightforward. The engage part, there's a big idea. In this case today, we were talking about powerful learning, gender equity, social anxiety, homelessness. So there's a big idea associated with each one of these challenges. Then there's an essential question, right? The essential question, what is the big question associated with this big idea that I want to grapple with? And then there's the challenge. So this part is the part that the teachers, in a pretty quick turnaround, can engage students. So it isn't a long process of, I'm going to teach them all this stuff and then I'm going to give them an assignment or even a challenge at the end of it. Students are very quickly co-constructing the essential question and the challenge. So a big idea, for example, it could be clean water and sanitation. So a broad concept important to you and the larger community, right? So you have this kind of big idea. This is the global goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. So already talked about the global goals, so there's lots of them there. Okay, so an essential question could be, what is water and why is it important to our community? Or how do we provide everyone in our community access to safe and affordable drinking water? How do we reduce the dumping of hazardous chemicals? That might be the essential question associated with a challenge around clean water. How do we use water efficiently? So it's an essential question that speaks to the people learning. So then you frame it as a challenge. It's a statement, it's a do something, it's a verb. Provide my community access to safe and affordable drinking water. Reduce the dumping of hazardous waste. Use water efficiently. Improve the use of water at our school. And many of these, if you take improve the use of water at our school, that can be done with very small children or large children, right? So, and everybody in between. So many of these challenges can be grappled with at whatever developmental level the student is at. So that's the challenge. You have a big idea, an essential question, and a challenge. Now it's showtime, right? So now it's investigate. So now everybody rolls up their sleeves. And the first thing is this whole notion of inquiry, guiding questions. Ask, ask, ask. Question, question, question. List out all of your questions. Ask more questions. Keep asking questions. Share your questions. Write them all down. Like some way that everybody involved in the challenge is asking questions and recording these questions. Once you have those questions, then there are guiding activities and resources. So the guiding activities and resources is actually where the teacher comes in, and this is where it can get a little challenging if there are so many different questions. So students can split them up, different people can answer different questions, you can group them, you can analyze them, you can put them together. Lots of ways of answering those questions through guiding activities, resources, and those things also can be collected and shared out so that other people grappling with the same challenge can also make use of, here was the question and here were some resources and guiding questions. So answering the questions shouldn't be just so hard that and we also are trying to figure out all the ways that every teacher doesn't have to figure it out all over again. So this is kind of the guiding activities, resources, research, analysis, and synthesis. So really learning a lot in order to inform the challenge that you have. So it might be to map the flow of water from reservoir to your faucet. It might be research regulations in your community around clean water. It might be learn to test water, right? Creating a water testing kit that consumers can use. It might be researching how much water a drip wastes, right? So there's a lot of questions in this investigation, and again, just a few examples. So that's engage, and then investigate, and now take action. And one of the important parts of challenge-based learning is that you take action at the end. It isn't just, you present your solution and then you all go home and you hope somebody does it someday. It is all about taking action, trying it, and then watching what happens and seeing results and reflecting across the entire project. So solution development, implement that solution, and then evaluate. So the taking action might be, in our school, I'm gonna go fix everything that leaks. Our team has discovered all these leaky drinking fountains or faucets or whatever, or toilets that run all the time. That's what they're gonna do, they're gonna fix everything that leaks. Or create an app that tracks water usage so people can get smarter if there's a drought, if there's a shortage of water. How can we actually get smarter about the water that we use every day? Develop and implement easy consumer water testing. In Flint, Michigan, when they had the problem with the bad drinking water, somebody did actually develop a consumer kit that people could use in their home to test their own water, which is really what it required, is empowering individuals. So again, solutions to some of these problems. Just this morning I was reading something unrelated to water, but it was about bees and how the population of bees has decreased, and somebody designed and developed these hexagonal things that you can put on your wall inside your house, right? So like honey, looks like a honeycomb, has this tube that goes out your window or out to the outside, and so bees can come in and out. And so it's this whole way that if we could actually get bee colonies in lots and lots of places, it could spur advance the population of bees. So these kinds of things, if you start listening for these things, these solutions to everyday problems that people are creating, kids absolutely can kids of all ages, university kids, learners of all ages can actually do all sorts of things. So some of the key elements, again, we have the 5 principles of powerful learning, but also that everyone's a learner. So the teacher as learner is a lot, it goes a lot to this problem of how you will, of teacher sort of ego and that kind of thing. Learner inspired and learner directed, we talked a lot about that, passion. The space and freedom to fail, that's a tough one, right? But that's another kind of something that's not necessarily in the culture of classrooms, because failure is, failure is an interesting one. Failure is, especially here in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of sort of hype around failure. And I always think in a lot of ways, failure has to be associated with somebody that's close by that will pick you up and support you, right? So some of the risk-taking and failure is not quite as straightforward. Slowing down for critical and creative thinking, and then making sure people can make a difference. One last thing on this, there are nano challenges, mini challenges, large challenges, right? So these have to do with the risk and reward. So as you get to bigger challenges, there's a bigger risk because you're investing time and resources and that kind of thing. And there are also rewards. There's the mini challenges, or all of these challenges also, that it goes up in terms of autonomy and ownership. So again, mini challenges and nano challenges might not have you can do a nano challenge in a class time. Mini challenges might be a little bit longer. And finally, the time and depth, right? So these are 3, you can think about this grain size, but for everything we sort of think about assigning to students, can we frame it in some sort of a challenge that would have some semblance of meaning to students? So we were talking about Dr. David Dwyer earlier this morning, and he's one of my longtime friends and mentors. And he, at one point, you were talking about, people say, oh, learning sciences, like, what do we know? And it's so complicated, and there's one side, and then there's the other side, the reading wars and whatever. So I said, what are the 10 things we know about learning from the research, all research-based, and these all have lots of citations, by the way, we can get those, they're all on our website. But these are 10 things that we know from research that we can use to help us in this endeavor to create more powerful learning environments. So that learning is developmental, right? We know this, it's not rocket science. That people have unique and jagged profiles. This is something Todd Rose at Harvard published the book, The End of Average. And this is something that's becoming more, a little bit more well known, but this notion of learner variability, and that people have these jagged profiles. They vary on a whole lot of different factors. So so that is something we know from research. So understanding people in a much more complex way than the sum of their test scores and grades, right? And even class attendance or whatever the other things we measure them by. We know that if something is personal and meaningful, it's motivating, and that motivation is important for learning. We know the importance of prior knowledge, right? So everybody comes in with stories and languages and experiences, and in some cases trauma, in some cases other kinds of things. But what do they bring in? What is their prior knowledge? What's their prior understanding, and how do we make the best use of that? We know that social interaction is really important for learning. We know that if this zone of proximal development, if something is challenging yet achievable, that people are like leaning in, they're trying things, so hitting something that you're constantly seeking, like what is that space that creates a challenge, but it isn't just so daunting that people won't do it. Practice makes perfect. You can create habits of mind that will help you become a better and better learner, and developing those habits of mind is something incredibly important to the learning process. Emotion matters, and emotion is something we're learning more and more about from learning sciences research, and the role of emotion on learning to read or learning of any kind. And that the total environment, the physical space, the physical environment, the safety, what else is happening around, the noise levels, the colors, like that whole total environment is actually important. So these are 10 things. There's other things that we know from the research. These are 10 things we know about learning from research that we should keep in our pockets every day. All right, so these were the things that we talked about this morning. Powerful learning, the attributes of powerful learning, and how do we ensure more students have opportunities, and our challenge is to expand powerful learning experiences. So we're not going to do this right now. You can take this with you. If we had a lot more time, we could now roll up our sleeves and actually come up with lots and lots of questions associated with this notion of expanding the opportunities for powerful learning. But you can take this with you. You can do this in your free time when you're flying home to wherever you're going to or whatever. You can think this through. Quick history. This whole notion of challenge-based learning came from inspiration from the Apple Classrooms of Tomorrow. So Keith Yoakum and others here and Pedro were very involved in the Apple Classrooms of Tomorrow research. 85 to 97, still the longest, I believe, still the longest base of longitudinal research about the effects of technology on learning. So just some powerful learnings from that, and you can engage Keith and Pedro in that conversation. I'm sure they have a lot to say about that. So what we did when I was at Apple, we said, all right, let's figure out what would be the Apple Classrooms of tomorrow today. What could we do today, right? What's changed, what's the same and what's different? And so we created this whole notion of ACOT 2. We created the first challenge-based learning framework, but that's that second that was super complex. Challenge-based learning 2 and challenge-based learning 3.0 has just like stripped away all the clutter and made it extremely straightforward. Not necessarily a lot easier to do. There's a website and there's a guide. So if you are, there's cbl.digitalpromise.org is the website, and then there's a guide on the iTunes store. It's an actual book that has all of this information in it as well. Last thing, July 9th to 11th in Monterey, down here in California, we're going to host a Challenge Institute where we will have a 2.5 days or so of people coming together to bring challenges associated with education. The big idea for this is going to be powerful learning. So if the big idea is powerful learning, then can you spend 2.5 days actually rolling up our sleeves and grappling with this, coming up with solutions and ways to solve for some of these barriers that we brought up earlier. All right. So what will you do? How will you take action? And with that, we may have a few minutes. I'm not sure what time you guys want to end, but we have a few minutes for other comments and questions. Okay. Excuse me? 2 or 3?
Yeah, we have 10 minutes.
We have a few minutes. Questions, thoughts, something you are going to take with you or take action on.
Very good presentation. I really enjoyed it. My name is Isabel. I'm from Puerto Rico. I was wondering, there are very similar elements of the challenge-based learning to the project-based learning model that we've been accustomed to. So maybe you can comment on what specifics may be new or redesigned in terms of the challenge-based learning model.
Yeah, that's funny. So one of the reasons we're sort of rebranding this as just the Challenge Institute is because people sort of do get hung up on a little bit on what are I had a reporter call me recently and said, CBL, what's the difference between competency-based learning and challenge-based learning? I was like, those are really two completely different things. But that's where I totally understand the question, and this is something that comes up a lot. I wouldn't worry about it. I think a good challenge is something that engages the hearts and minds and it results in taking action, right? You can use the project-based learning protocols. I mean, and there are different project-based learning protocols. There's experiential learning, there's service learning, there's internships. There are a lot of things that you can kind of wrap around this. But what are those learning experiences where people lean forward, lean in, solve challenges? And Puerto Rico has a whole host of challenges. Bless you for finding your way here. Appreciate that. Other questions, comments, thoughts? Something that you're going to do. What are you all going to do up in this cluster here from New York? Where are you from in New York? Upstate. Okay, so what's something that you're going to do as a result? What are your thoughts? You have a challenge around thinking about how you're going to take something home and help people engage with this. Any thoughts on that?
I just Googled your schools in New York. We have
gonna go to work on Wednesday and throw out all my algebra packets.
All right, there's a couple actions.
One thing I'm starting to notice about a lot of really successful examples of project-based learning and problem-based learning that I'm seeing is links to having industry professionals come into the classroom. So you know the example with the filmmakers, and I guess it helps to overcome that problem where we're wanting students to participate in cutting-edge technologies that a teacher can't always be at the forefront of, especially if students are given some flexibility in the direction and the technologies that they use in their products. So I guess what I'm asking is, do you think that's a sustainable model? Is it a really important part of successful project-based learning to have these outside professionals come into the classroom, or to the students go to them? And can you give any tips around how to get that happening on a large scale when you might be dealing with, you know, a number of products or a number of projects in classroom?
Such a great question. It's how you build social capital so that you have access to outside experts that can help your students or your students can go to. And this is actually a bigger question than just technology, because I think a lot of people can kind of figure out the technologies, or you can Google it or that kind of thing. But this idea about how do you get community people to work with your students, to listen to them, to respond to their ideas, to look at their work and give them feedback. It is such a powerful learning opportunity. So some of the things that I've seen, one is this platform called Community Share. And the idea was that some teachers are really good at this. They know people. They have people who can come into their classroom. They have their own networks. And many kids have parents that have these networks of people around them where they can get internships. They can go, engage with these adults. But many people don't. So the idea is, how do we create an environment where many more people have access to that? So Community Share is a platform, and I know you're Googling it. I'm not even sure it is out there yet. It's in Tucson, Arizona, is where they developed this. And it basically says, it has community people sign up, like, I know photography, or I have, time to look at kids' animations, or I'm a music composer, or I teach piano, or whatever the things are. So they have people sign up, and then they have it's a matchmaking for people who know stuff and people who need to know stuff. So it's really, really powerful, and that is a very important part of this. Also, many high-tech companies have opportunities for their people to work with young people. And so this idea that a company may have people, but they may not be in your geographic area, but they can use video conference, and they can, on their lunch hour, engage with a student for half an hour, or something like that. So so you bring up a huge important problem and a huge opportunity, and the systems for making that happen at scale are not necessarily there yet, but a lot of the elements are in place. That's a good challenge. Someone should solve that challenge. I think we have time for one more.
I have my experience of youth and engineering students, maker, acceleration, and hackathon. And I'd like to know if you have any experience with the IoT technologies on these startup challenges.
I mean, IoT, that Internet of Things. I mean, so we have maker. So maker learning is part of something we work on a lot. And we just launched a maker leadership framework, right? So trying to build it more at scale, so it isn't just the cool places and the libraries and the very niche places where people can work. So building maker spaces and having these opportunities to sew and to 3D print and to use these technologies when you need them to solve something is important. I can't think of a specific example where kind of IoT would come in, except for perhaps around, so healthcare seems to be one area that people are designing, apps on your watch, or things, the posture thing where you put it on your back and then it vibrates if you're not standing up straight. That's pretty good invention. So those kinds of things, again, I think that that should be part of the solution set, right? So part of what's available to students to use, to access in order to solve a challenge, right? So, yeah, so I don't have a better example. Do you have an example? What's your favorite solution around it and the things that you've seen kids or people engineer?
We are working a lot on a smart house
Yeah.
and also in health and agribusiness. I would like to see if you had any more applications with youth for learning process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the tent is. I mean, actually, that was the smart tent, right? So that's an example that youth actually created. But yeah, again, the sky is the limit with respect to the kinds of challenges you can give students. If there's a problem to solve that can be solved with a smart house or a smarter house or some semblance of that, then that would definitely be a challenge worthy of students' energy and intelligence. Thank you very, very much for your attention and time this morning. This is a great conference, small but mighty, you know, expanding this opportunity. The last word I would say is equity. And equity is kind of at the core of all of this, because many of these opportunities are for students who are in schools that have kind of teachers and leaders who can engage with them. And how we make that opportunity available for many more students, and especially students who need to find their way out of poverty or have bigger opportunities in their life. These are the kinds of experiences that will propel them into a kind of life of learning. So thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Really inspired, and I learned a lot, and I know everyone here got a good idea about what the nice job you have been doing. And thank you everyone. It's our last half day. So we have now the coffee, other sessions, and finally we have the last panel at 12:30 for those who stay here up to the end. So let's go to the coffee break. Thank you.